Now, what is the problem with the Zoom?
Okay, today we'll discuss about your unit 1 that we have as part of the syllabus. Okay. So here, your media ethics classes where you have unit 1 where you have salient features of Indian Constitution and public interest litigation, and the other one is Article 19(1)(a), the freedom of speech and expression, and its limitations on the freedom of speech and expression, which were laid down uh, under Article 19(2) of the Indian Constitution. Hope you are able to hear me. Uh, see, India is governed on the basis of Indian Constitution. It is a supreme law of our country, which lays down the principles and the structure. Based on that, political parties, political principles, procedures, powers, and duties of the governments were laid down. So here, Indian Constitution is adopted on it was Indian Constitution which came into force on January 26, 1950 onwards. And from there, we have Indian Constitution. Based on the Indian Constitution, its principles, only the Indian government functions. So Indian Constitution is the supreme law of this country that laid down the structure and principles which define the fundamental political principles, procedures, powers, duties of the government systems. And here, one of the important aspect of our Indian Constitution, the salient feature of Indian Constitution is the fundamental rights, which are incorporated in Part 3 of our Constitution. And again, we have the directive principles of state policy that were incorporated in Part 4 of the Indian Constitution. The directive principles of state policy, or DPSP, what we call them, these are the guidelines or the principles given to the central and also the state governments to keep in mind while framing the laws and policies in our country. So the directive principles are incorporated in Part 4 of the Indian Constitution, and fundamental rights were incorporated in Part 3 of the Indian Constitution. So at present, we have 6 fundamental rights which are guaranteed by the Constitution to every citizen in this country. If you see the Indian Constitution, the country, just now I said, India is governed on the basis of the Constitution, and the Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is considered as the chief architect of the Indian Constitution. He was the chairman of the drafting committee which drafted the Constitution of India. And it is declared that India will be a sovereign, socialist, secular, and democratic republic. So the Constitution declares India as a sovereign, socialist, secular, and democratic country. Finally, the Constituent Assembly, which adopted the Indian Constitution on November 26th, 1949, and that came into force on January 26th, 1950, which we celebrate as the Republic Day in our country. If you see the Indian Constitution, we have a preamble that is called as the introduction to the Indian Constitution. The preamble or the introduction part, what we have, preamble, that comprises ideals, objectives, and basic principles of the Constitution. The Indian Constitution assures its citizens of justice, equality, liberty, and endeavors to promote fraternity among them. There is no need for the history, I believe. We'll move on to the salient features of Indian Constitution. Okay. The salient features of Indian Constitution, if you see, Indian Constitution is a written constitution. Indian Constitution is a written constitution. It is the lengthiest constitution in the world. For framing the Indian Constitution, it took 2 years, 11 months, and 18 days. When it was adopted, it was consisting of 395 articles in 22 parts and 8 schedules, along with the preamble that we have just now said. Preamble is the introduction to the Indian Constitution. But at present, it consists of 25 parts containing 448 articles, 12 schedules, and 105 amendments. So at 105 times, the Indian Constitution was amended. The last amendment that came into force was on August 10th, 2021. Combination of rigidity and flexibility. The Indian Constitution is a unique document that which is a combination of rigidity and flexibility. And generally, if a constitution may be called rigid or it is flexible based on the amendment process to the Constitution. So based on the amendment procedure, whether a constitution is rigid or flexible, that is being decided. So Indian Constitution is rigid and also flexible. So the Constitution of India provides 3 categories of amendments to the Constitution. The first category of amendment can be done by the 2 houses of the parliament, that is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, with a simple majority of the members present and voting off before sending it to the president acceptance or president's assent. The second category of amendment requires a special majority, and it can be passed in each house of the parliament, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, by a majority of the total members of the house, as well as by the 2/3 majority of the members present and voting in each house of the parliament, that is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, and then it is sent to the president's assent. And if you see the third category of amendment, which requires special majority mentioned in the second category, and the same has to be approved by at least 50% of the state legislatures. So hence, the Indian Constitution provides for all 3 categories of amendments, ranging from simple majority of the members present, and it can be sent to the assent of the assent for the president, and otherwise it requires a special majority and 2/3 of the members who are present and participate in voting, and then it is sent to the president assent. So because of the amendment procedures, we have 3 categories: simple to complex. The Indian Constitution, what we call it as a rigid and also flexible. Federal polity. India is a union of states. India has adopted a federal structure of government where we have governments at 2 distinct levels. One is the central government, or what we call it as also the union government, and also the state government. The powers are distributed among both the governments, central and also the state. When you see the fundamental rights and fundamental duties, the Indian Constitution guarantees fundamental rights, which are included in Part 3 of the Indian Constitution. There are 6 fundamental rights: right to equality, right to freedom. Again, under right to freedom, you have certain freedoms. Then right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, as India is a secular country, and cultural and educational rights, right to constitutional remedies, and right to education. The fundamental rights are covered from Article 14 to 32 of the Indian Constitution, and these are one of the important features of Indian Constitution. And when you see the fundamental duties which were added to the Constitution with 42nd Amendment in the year 1976. So earlier first, when they were added in the Constitution with 42nd Amendment, there were only 10 fundamental duties that were recommended by Sardar Swaran Singh Committee. Later on, in 2002, with 86th Amendment to the Constitution, one more fundamental duty is added to the existing 10 fundamental duties. So the fundamental duties were added to remind the citizens of the country that they have certain obligations towards the country and also the society. The fundamental duty of each citizen in this country is to further the national integration and contribute towards a better society. If you see the parliamentary democracy, India is a parliamentary form of democracy. In a parliamentary form of democracy, there is a close relationship between the legislature and the executive. In the parliamentary democracy, the head of the state is nominal, and in our country, the president is the head of the state, or what we call the nation. The president enjoys abundant powers, but in practice, the Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister, which really exercises these powers, and President implements on the advice of the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers. Integrated single judicial system. India has a single integrated judicial system with Supreme Court as the apex court of the judicial system. And the high courts in all the states are below the Supreme Courts, and these high courts are under the control and the high courts control and supervise the lower courts, that includes the district courts. So independence form of judiciary. Judicial system in India is independent and impartial. It is free from influence of the executive and the legislature. The judges are appointed on the basis of their merit and also the qualification. So India, where we have a single judicial system with Supreme Court as the apex body of the judicial system, and under the Supreme Court we have high courts. Under the high courts we have the district courts and others under the high courts. Single citizenship. There is only a single citizenship in India, which means every Indian is a citizen of this country, irrespective of place of his residence or place of his birth, and each and everyone can secure employment anywhere in the country, and they can enjoy all the rights equally in all parts of the country without any kind of discrimination. Universal adult franchise, or what we call its right to vote. The Indian Constitution provides universal adult franchise. Anyone who has completed 18 years of age, irrespective of his or her caste, creed, sex, religion, has the right to vote in general elections and choose their public representative by voting in favor of them. So these are the 8 salient features of Indian Constitution. When you see the fundamental rights as part of your Unit 1, we also have fundamental rights. Just now I said fundamental rights are incorporated in Part 3 of the Indian Constitution. The fundamental rights were included in the Constitution because they were considered as essential for the development of the personality of every individual and to preserve human dignity. And all the people, irrespective of their age, race, religion, caste, gender, they have been given the right to petition in Supreme Court or the High Court for the enforcement of their fundamental rights. If anyone violates their fundamental rights, and they can approach Supreme Court or High Court for the protection of their rights. It is not necessary that the aggrieved party has to be one to approach the Supreme Court or High Court for protecting their rights, but there is a provision like poverty-stricken people or those who cannot approach the Supreme Court on behalf of them. Any other third party also can approach the High Court or Supreme Court in the form of uh, writing a petition in the form of public interest litigation to protect the rights of the people. In some cases, High Court judges also have or acted on a summative basis based on the newspapers reports. They also take into account the cases. So the fundamental rights help the individuals. They protect the individuals, and also the fundamental rights also protects. It also prevent the gross violations of human rights in our country, as the fundamental rights are guaranteed by the Constitution and they are enforceable in courts. They emphasize on the fundamental unity of India by guaranteeing all the citizens in this country the access and use of the same facilities irrespective of their background. Some of the fundamental rights apply for persons of any nationality, whereas others are available to only the citizens of this country. And on the other hand, freedom of speech and expression, freedom to reside anywhere in the country, settle down in any part of the country is only reserved for the Indian citizens, including non-resident Indian citizens. The right to equality in matters of public employment cannot be conferred to overseas citizens of India. Constitution of India guarantees fundamental rights, which are included in Part 3 of the Indian Constitution, and these fundamental rights are covered from Article 14 to 32 of the Indian Constitution, and they are the important features of the Indian Constitution. And these fundamental rights are defined as the basic human rights, and every citizen in this country have the right to enjoy these fundamental rights, and violation of these rights results in severe punishments which are prescribed under the Indian Penal Code sections or IPC sections, and also other special laws which are enacted to protect the rights of the individuals. And fundamental rights are universally applicable to all the citizens in this country, irrespective of their race, place of birth, caste, religion, gender, and these rights are enforceable by courts subject to the certain restrictions. And the fundamental rights include right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, right to cultural and educational rights, right to constitutional remedies. But during the emergency, all these fundamental rights are suspended by the president's assent, and as well as the individuals in this country do not have any right to approach the court also for the protection of their rights. And even during the emergency, Article 19 that includes the freedom of speech and expression, freedom of movement, freedom to assemble, etc., all those will be suspended. When you see the right to equality, that deals, the right to equality is incorporated under Article 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. The right to equality includes equality before the law, equality before the law, and equal opportunities in matters of employment, abolition of untouchability, abolition of titles. So no individual would be discriminated on the basis of religion, race, caste, gender, or a place of birth. So here, Article 14 deals with the right equality before the law. So Indian Constitution ensures its citizens the right to equality before law, which means each and every citizen in this country is equal before the law. Social equality and equal access to public areas, that is included under Article 15 of the Indian Constitution, where we each and every individual in this country access to the public places like place of worship or parks or any public places without any discrimination. Equality in matters of public employment, under it is provided under Article 16 without any discrimination. All the citizens in this country have equality in matters of public employment. They can apply and they can be get selected for any kind of job. Abolition of untouchability under Article 17, untouchability, the practice of untouchability is abolished. Abolition of titles, that is being there under Article 18 of the Indian Constitution. And if you see the right to freedom, the second fundamental right, that is guaranteed under Article 19, 20, 21, and 21A and also 22 of the Indian Constitution. Right to freedom includes freedom of speech and expression, freedom of assembly, freedom to form associations or unions or cooperatives, freedom of movement, freedom to reside any place in this country, right to practice any profession or occupation, and Article 21 deals with right to life and personal liberty and protection in respect of convictions in offenses and protection against arrest and detention in certain cases. So the right to freedom that includes under Article 19(1) of the Indian Constitution, we have 6 freedoms under Article 19(1). The freedom of speech and expression that is freedom of speech and expression is also a fundamental right that is protected under Article 19(1)(a) of the Indian Constitution. Article 19(1)(b), freedom to assemble peacefully without any arms. So Indian citizens anywhere in this country freely assemble without any arms. And Article 19(1)(c), individuals, the citizens in this country have freedom to form associations or unions and also the cooperative societies. Article 19(1)(d) deals with freedom to move freely without freely throughout the country. So citizens of this country can freely move throughout the country. And Article 19(1)(e), freedom to reside or live any part of the country. Article 19(1)(f), freedom to practice any profession or to carry out any occupation. These are fundamental rights that are guaranteed under Article 19(1) of the Indian Constitution. And Article 20 deals with no person shall be convicted of any offense except for violation of the law that is in force. Article 21 that deals with that is right to life. No person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to the procedure that is established by the law. Article 21(a) that deals with the state shall provide free and compulsory education to all the children between the age group of 6 to 14 years by law in this country, that we also call it as Right to Education Act. The Right to Education Act that came into force from April 1st, 2010. Article 22(1), no person who is arrested shall be detained in the custody without being informed as soon as they may be of the grounds for such arrest, nor shall be denied the right to consult or right to defend by a legal practitioner of his choice, and whoever is arrested, detained in the custody shall be produced before the nearest magistrate within 24 hours from the time of arrest. The third fundamental right is right against exploitation. Article 23 prohibits the trafficking of human beings and forced labor. Article 24 prohibits the employment of children in factories. Even we have child labor law that protects the rights of the children. Article 23(1), trafficking of human beings and beggars and other forms of forced labor are prohibited, and any contravention of this provision shall be an offense and punishable by the law. According to Article 24, no child below the age of 14 years shall be employed to work in any factory or mine or engaged in any other hazardous professions. Right to freedom of religion. As India is a secular country, each and every citizen in this country have right to freedom of religion. The right to freedom of religion is protected under Article 25, 26, 27, and 28 of the Indian Constitution. India is a diverse nation in terms of religion, where all the religions are equally respected and practiced by people in this country. So freedom of religion in India is a fundamental right which guaranteed under Article 25, 26, 27, and 28 of the Indian Constitution that provides religious freedom to all the citizens in this country. The preamble of Indian Constitution also states that India is a secular republic country, which means every citizen in this country have a right to freedom of practice or promote any religion peacefully in this country. Article 25 states that all the persons in the country are equally allowed to freedom of conscience and the right to freely profess, practice, and promote any religion. Article 25, subject to public order, morality, health, to the other provisions of the part, all persons are equally entitled to freedom of conscience and right to freely profess or practice and propagate their religion. Article 27 says that no person shall be forced to pay any tax for the promotion and maintenance of any particular religion. So all the citizens in this country have right to freedom of religion. The right to freedom of religion is guaranteed under Article 25, 26, 27, and 28 of the Indian Constitution. And as India is a secular country, we have the right to freedom of religion. And if you see the right to constitutional remedies, the right to cultural and educational rights, a citizen in this country having distinct languages, spirit, or culture of its own shall have the right to conserve the culture of the same. So no person shall be denied admission into any educational institution that is maintained by the state or receiving any support out of the state funds on the grounds of any religion, race, caste, or language, or any of the. And minorities, religious linguistic groups also can set up their own educational institution to preserve and develop their own culture. And while granting support or aid to these institutions, the state cannot discriminate against any institution on the basis of the fact that it is managed by a minority institution. The right to constitutional remedies. Just now we have discussed that individuals, the fundamental rights, if violated by any individual, government, or any other organization, etc., individuals have right to approach the Supreme Court or High Court for the protection and promotion of their rights. So the right to constitutional remedies that provides The right to constitutional remedies empowers the citizens in this country to move to a court of law in case of any denial of the fundamental rights. In case of imprisonment, also a person can ask the court to see if it is according to the provisions of the law in this country or not. If the court finds that it is not, then the person will not will have to be freed. If it is a fundamental right of every citizen in this country, and the state has a responsibility to safeguard and protect the citizens in this country. The Supreme Court of India shall have the power to issue directions or orders or writs such as habeas corpus, mandamus, prohibition, quo warrant, and certiorari, etc., to protect the rights of people in this country. But during the emergency, all the rights of the individuals will be suspended by the central government. And Article 32 provides the right to constitutional remedies, which means a person has a right to move to Supreme Court for getting his fundamental rights protected, while Supreme Court has power to issue writs under Article 32 of the Indian Constitution for the protection of the rights of the citizens in this country. Right to education with the insertion of Article 21A under Article 21 that is right to life. The Right to Education Act came into force. The Right to Education Act came into force from April 1st, 2010, and it is a fundamental right of every child in this country to attain free and compulsory education, those who are between the age group of 6 to 14 years by law. Right to property was originally guaranteed as a fundamental right, but it by the Constitution of India that guarantees the citizens in this country to acquire, hold, or dispose of any property. But with the 44th Amendment to the Constitution in the year 1978, the right to property was deleted from the list of fundamental rights. So these are fundamental rights. And if you see the right to information, the Right to Information Act that came into force in the year 2005, it is also considered as a fundamental right under Article 19 of the Indian Constitution and Article of 21 of the Indian Constitution. Article 19 deals with the freedom of right to freedom, under which we also have right to freedom of speech and expression that is guaranteed under Article 19. 1A of the Indian Constitution. According to the Right to Right to Information Act that came into force from 2005, each and every citizen in this country have a right to access to information that is under the control of the public authorities, and each organization, the government organizations, have their own PIOs to be appointed according to the Right to Information Act, and the PIOs of the concerned organizations would provide information to the RTI applicants. So each at the central level, we have the Central Information Commission, and we have at state level, State Information Commission to discharge duties under the Right to Information Act. And right to privacy. The Supreme Court of India on August 24th, 2017 declared right to privacy is also a fundamental right that should be protected under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution that deals with right to life. And according to the Supreme Court of India, right to privacy is also a part of the right to life, and the privacy of individuals should be protected by law. And there is, when you speak about the media institutions, etc., The media institutions have a special responsibility. The media institutions should not invade the privacy of individuals, but blatantly the media institutions uh, also carry out the information relates to the private efforts of individuals who are having some kind of stature in our country. But if the media institutions violates the right to privacy of individuals, the individuals also have a right to privacy, and they can approach High Court or the Supreme Court for damaging their reputation by the media organizations. We have a right to we have a defamation law in our country where the individuals can approach the High Court or Supreme Court for claiming the damages or for damaging the reputation of the individuals. So there we have two kinds of defamation. One is libel and the other one is slander. Spoken form of defamation, we call it as a uh, slander, and the written form of defamation, we call it as the libel. And the IPC sections, Indian Penal Code, section 499, 500, 501, and 502 deals with the defamation law. So these are the salient features of Indian Constitution. And one more we have is the directive principles of state policy. Those DPSP are the directive principles of state policy. These are the guidelines or the principles which are given to the state and central government to keep in mind while framing the laws and policies in the country. The DPSP are uh, provided under Articles 36 to 51. Article 36 is the definition. 37, application of the principles contained in this part 4 of the Indian Constitution, that where we have DPSP. And Article 38, the state has to secure a social order for the promotion of the welfare of the people. 38(1) of the Constitution talks about the social order based on justice. 38(1) says that it is the responsibility of the state to work for the welfare of the people. Social order includes the law and order. It also includes the public order and the security of the state. That is why it is the responsibility of the state to maintain public peace, public safety, and public order. Article 39 of the Constitution directs the state to follow the principles while making policy for the citizens. 39A of the Constitution says that it is the duty of the state to provide free legal support to all the citizens in this country. 39B also covers material resources for the purpose of development, construction of a house for the purpose of providing public facilities like roads, playgrounds, bridges, and the government can acquire the land of the private owners. Article 40 of the Constitution talks about Panchayat Raj institutions. It is the responsibility of the state to take all the steps for the establishment of Panchayat Raj institutions. Article 41 of the Constitution says that the state has a duty to provide employment, education, and to provide help to those who are unemployed and those who can't take care of themselves, like old age people. Because of that, the old age pensions are provided by the state governments. And Article 42 of the Constitution directs the state to develop the condition of human beings and provide maternity relief. Article 43 refers to the living wages of the workers, which means that the state has a responsibility to make a provision regarding the wages of the workers, and the wages should be as such that he can maintain all the basic necessities like clothes, food, and shelter. Article 43A of the Constitution talks about the participation of workers in management of industries. 43A says that through the legislation, the state has a responsibility to secure the participation of workers. 44 of the Constitution states that it is the duty of the state to secure the citizens a uniform civil code throughout the territory of the country. Article 45 of the Constitution directs the state to make provisions regarding free and compulsory education to all the children till the age of 14 years. And the reason behind is to all the children is to eradicate the illiteracy rate. Article 46 of the Indian Constitution grants power to the state to do promotion of the educational and economic interests of the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and other weaker sections of the society. The state also has the responsibility to protect them from all forms of exploitation, injustice from the society. Article 47 of the Constitution makes an obligation to the state to improve the level of nutrition and maintain the standards of living in the state. It also makes an obligation on the state to improve the conditions of public health. The state also has the power to prohibit all intoxicating drinks and drugs which are injurious to health except for the medical purposes. Article 48 of the Constitution talks about the organization of agriculture and animal husbandry. It is also the duty of the state to organize agriculture and animal husbandry. Article 48 also directs the state to prohibit slaughtering of cows, calves, and another dairy animal. Article 48 of the Constitution says that it is the responsibility of the state to take all the necessary steps to protect the environment, forest, and wildlife animals. Article 49 of the Constitution grants the power to the state to take care of and protect monument and historical places. State also has a special responsibility to protect the ancient and historical monuments. Article 50 of the Constitution talks about the separation of judiciary from executive. Judiciary is an independent body. The guardian of the Constitution is the judiciary. If the executive will start working like judiciary, then there will be a clash of power. That is why Article 50 separates the judiciary from the executive. Article 51 of the Constitution talks about the promotion of international peace and security. It is the responsibility of the state to promote peace and security with another country. It is the responsibility of the state to maintain good relations with a foreign country. Good relations with another country helps the state in many ways. It ranks poorly. If you see the Press Freedom Index of 2021 that was released by Reporters Without Borders, RWB, India ranks 142. India got 142 rank among the 180 listed countries. And the status of freedom of the press in our country is same like that of an ordinary citizen. The press cannot claim any kind of immunity from taxation. They are subject to the same laws regulating the industrial relations. Press employees are also subject to the same laws regulating the industrial employment. What you have here is Article 19(2) of the Indian Constitution. Just we have talked about the freedom of speech and expression in the previous class also. All the citizens in this country have the freedom of speech and expression, and under Article 19(1) of the Indian Constitution, but under Article 19(2) of the Indian Constitution, there are some restrictions that are laid down under the freedom of speech and expression. And the freedom of speech and expression is the same way the freedom of the press is also guaranteed by the Constitution indirectly. And the media institutions are being considered as the fourth estate of or the fourth pillar of the democracy, along with the judiciary, executive, and administration. And under Article 19(2) of the Indian Constitution, there are certain reasonable restrictions that are laid down on the freedom of speech and expression. The reasonable restrictions are anywhere if the freedom of speech and expression or publication of any information, if it affects the sovereignty and integrity of the country, security of the state, or friendly relations with foreign state, or anything which is not acceptable, or it is against the public order, or it is indecent and affects the morality of the people and the society, anything which amounts to defamation, or anything which amounts to contempt of court, publication of anything, or an action of any individual and amounts to the contempt of court, or any information that is incitement to an offense. In all these cases, the individual's freedom is being subject to the reasonable restrictions. If you see the concept of pill is nothing but public interest litigation. It is a litigation for the protection of public interest, and the pill may be filed by an aggrieved party or any other third party, or it may be introduced in the court itself on a summary basis. The public interest litigation is filed in a court for the protection of public interest that can include pollution, terrorism, road safety, environmental protection, or anything that might affect the public. Public interest litigation has been interpreted by the judges for the consideration in the interest of the public at large. The appeal is being filed in various areas, which includes the violation of basic human rights of the poor, content or conduct of government policy or a scheme, pressurize municipal authorities to perform a public duty, violation of religious rights, violation of fundamental rights, or any basic rights which are provided under Article 21 of the Constitution that guarantees the citizens in this country right to life, which integrates all the rights of the people. When any violations are taking place in the interest of the public, a public interest a public interest litigation can be filed in the court. Right to live is a fundamental right, but it also and it includes that all the citizens in this country have a right to live in pollution-free environment, right to have free water and air. So anything which endangers the quality of life of the individuals and anything which violates their rights, and the people in these circumstances can file the public interest litigation for protecting the larger public interest. So public interest litigation was first filed in the country in the year 1979 by Husianara Khatun against the Bihar state on the basis of a news report that was published in Indian Express newspaper, which highlighted the problems of thousands of prisoners who are under trial in different jails in Bihar. Okay, I think we'll stop here. Okay, it is already 1. So I will be leaving the session. Tomorrow we'll have our class at 12 o'clock. Thank you.